I've played New Vegas before. A lot, actually. So when I decided to make a video about its first hour, I had a little bit of a problem. This isn't my first time waking up in Doc Mitchell's house. I already know who Benny is, and I know it's waiting for me outside of Goodsprings. And I also know eventually where the story goes. So I'm not really going into this experience for New Vegas for the first time, giving you guys a blind reaction to the first hour. Instead, I want to do something a little different. I want to go back to the beginning and figure out why this game has managed to stick with me and so many others for so long. New Vegas is a strange game to look at in 2026. It's 16 years old. The animations are rough. The gameplay is definitely dated. The gunplay is really dated. And there are moments when you can practically feel the game struggling underneath its own weight. But people are still talking about it. They're still replaying it. They're still making mods for it. And probably most importantly, they're still talking about the choices they made in this game years after they played it. That being said, in this video, I'm going to spend the first hour of New Vegas looking at the game less like someone playing it for the first time, and more like someone trying to understand it. What does New Vegas actually do during its first hour? How quickly does it establish its world? How much freedom does the player really have? And most importantly, does the first hour work? The game starts with me waking up in Doc Mitchell's house, which is honestly one of the best ways an RPG can start. I'm not a legendary hero. I'm not the chosen one. I don't have some mysterious prophecy waiting to explain everything I'm going to do. Really, I don't even know at this point why I'm here. I got shot in the head and left for dead. That's it. That's when New Vegas does something that seems pretty simple, but is actually really important. It asks me who I am. Before I've even stepped outside, before I've fought anybody, before I've even looked at my Pip-Boy, I'm deciding my character's special stats, my skills, my traits, and eventually what kind of person I'm going to be. What's interesting about this is that these aren't just numbers that exist somewhere in the background. New Vegas is constantly willing to let these decisions affect how you interact with the world. Speech can change conversation. Medicine can give you additional dialogue options, and science can open different solutions to what might otherwise be violent situations. Even something as seemingly small and ridiculous as having a high enough skill in a specific area can completely change how you approach a situation. And this is where I think New Vegas really establishes what kind of game it's going to be. It's not telling me, here's how you're supposed to play. It's asking me, how do you want to play? There's also something funny about doing this when you're already, when you've already played the game. The first time I played New Vegas, character creation felt like preparation. Now it feels more like I'm deciding what kind of experiment I'm about to run. Eventually, Doc Mitchell sends me out into Goodsprings, and this is where the game really begins. Goodsprings is a great choice for an opening area because it's small, like really small. Kind of reminds me of my hometown. There's a saloon, a general store, a couple houses, a school, gas station. I didn't have one of those. And a handful of people. And that's basically it. But somehow, this tiny little town gives you an absurd amount of information. There's a group of powder gangers who have taken over the prison nearby. There's a local town that's caught up in the middle of a conflict. There's this guy named Ringo who wants to play cards with you while he's hiding in the back of said gas station. And before long, you're going to have to decide which side you want to be on.
Cheyenne, stay.
This is one of the first things that stands out when you come back to New Vegas after playing more modern RPGs.
Yeah.
The game doesn't really seem interested in making sure you understand what the right thing to do is. It kind of wants to know what you think the right thing to do is. It gives you information, and then it lets you decide what to do with it.
Now, see the sarsaparilla bottles on the fence there?
The game does offer a tutorial,
Try to hit a couple of them.
and Sunny Smiles is basically the entire tutorial. But even the tutorial doesn't really feel particularly tutorial like. She teaches you how to shoot, how to use VATs, how to heal, and how to deal with enemies. And the game really wraps all that up in like a real situation, but you don't even have to do it. And I kind of like that because, like, in real life, if you were living in Goodsprings, you could just tell her, no, I don't want to deal with your water.
Follow me. It's just down to the southeast a short ways.
And we do it anyways because we're not standing in a shooting range because the developers need somewhere to teach us how to shoot. We're hunting geckos because that's something that makes sense inside of the world. And that's the pattern that New Vegas keeps using. Its mechanics are introduced through the world instead of being completely separated from it. But then we get to the real test, the powder ganger situation. At this point, the game has given me a problem without giving me a solution. Because there really isn't one solution. I can help Ringo, I can help the town, I can help Ringo and the town, I can help the powder gangers, or I can just walk away and do nothing.
What the hell is your problem?
Even further than that, I can convince the people of the town to do nothing. I can convince them not to fight. I can convince them to fight. And if I really wanted to, I could probably just start killing people and see what happens. This is probably the part of New Vegas that I appreciate more now than when I first started playing it. The game doesn't make the choice important because some giant cutscene tells me it's important. It makes it important because the people in the game around me react to it. If I side with Goodsprings, these people remember it. If I side with the powder gangers, these people remember that too. And even though this is still relatively small in the grand schemes of the Mojave wasteland, it establishes something that becomes incredibly important later. The world isn't just a collection of quests waiting for me to complete them. It's a collection of people who have their own interest. And that's what makes New Vegas feel different. It has probably the best karma system in maybe even any game I've ever played. Fable might compete with it.
Howdy.
But it's the center of this world.
Hi there. Sticking around
I'm just
Goodsprings
someone
for a
who's
while?
arrived in the middle of it, and I'm deciding what's going on.
Say no more.
Eventually, whether I resolve the Goodsprings situation or simply decide that I've had enough, there's nothing really stopping me from leaving. And this is where the game starts opening up.
However, between you, me, and Ringo, we aren't exactly
The map
close
isn't
to
particularly impressive by
a lot of
modern
people around here
standards.
look up to Trudy. If
It's
you
not
think you should
enormous.
join us,
There aren't
some of the folks in town might
a
decide
million
to help
icons
out.
covering
I
it
know
yet.
Pete's
As you
got stuff
explore,
somewhere.
you'll see
Check
more,
just got a
but
shipment of leather armor we could borrow.
really, and I'll get to this later, the game gives you a lot of emptiness. And this kind of leads me into my next point. Modern RPGs are often incredibly good at giving you things to do, whereas New Vegas is incredibly good at giving you reasons to decide what you want to do. And there's a difference between these two things. The difference is that the Mojave is interesting and not interesting at the same time. There's a lot of empty space, a lot of walking, a lot of moments where nothing is particularly happening. And I think that's intentional. The game wants you to notice things. When you're walking through the Mojave wasteland, you will notice if there's a building in the difference. You'll notice if there's a weird landmark, a group of enemies standing off in the distance, or a road that you haven't taken. And because the game doesn't constantly tell you what matters, you start deciding what matters yourself. And that's a huge part of why exploration in New Vegas can feel so personal. Two players can leave Goodsprings at the same time, at the same spot, and have completely different experiences. One player might follow the road. Another might wander into the desert. One might go north and run into some death claws. And another might spend the first hour stealing everything that isn't nailed down. And somehow, all of those things feel like valid ways to play. Now, I don't want this video to turn into a love letter about New Vegas where I pretend where everything about the game is perfect, because it isn't. The gunplay feels old, the animations are rough, and some of the environments look extremely dated, as I've mentioned before. And there are moments where the edge of the game is really impossible to ignore. But what's interesting is how quickly these things stop mattering when the systems underneath are so interactive. A character might say something different because of my skill levels. A quest might play out differently because I have a decision coming into my present that I made 10 minutes ago. A faction might react differently because of something that I did, and suddenly I'm not thinking about how old the game looks anymore. I'm thinking about what have I done and how's that affecting my current playthrough. And that's probably the best surprise coming back to New Vegas. The first hour isn't particularly impressive because of the storyline or what the game shows you. It's impressive because of what it allows you to do. When I walk out of Doc Mitchell's, there's no massive spectacle. There's no giant boss fights. There's no 10-minute cinematic telling me why this world matters. Instead, New Vegas slowly hands me pieces of the world and trusts me to put them together. And because I've played this game before, I know where some of those pieces eventually lead. And I know which characters matter. I know which factions become important. And I know what's waiting for me further down the road. But somehow, knowing all of that makes the opening more interesting rather than less interesting. Because now I can see how much the game is setting up before I even realize it. So, after spending an hour with New Vegas, does the opening still hold up? I think it does. But not because it's aged really well. And not because it's technically better than every other RPG that came after it, because it's not. It works because New Vegas understands something that a lot of games still struggle with. Giving the player freedom isn't about giving them a giant map and 100 quest markers. It's about giving them a situation and trusting them to decide what matters to them. And that's what New Vegas does almost immediately. You wake up after being shot in the head. You walk into a small town, you meet people, discover a problem, and then New Vegas asks, what are you going to do about it? Since I've played New Vegas before, I didn't discover the story in the first hour, but I did discover something else. I remembered why I wanted to keep playing in the first place. New Vegas doesn't make you feel like the most important person in the Mojave. It makes you feel like you have a place in it and something to do. And 16 years later, that's still pretty impressive. And that's why I think the first hour of New Vegas is worth remembering.